Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ultraviolet Protection Factor Testing for Clothing with Lydia Tjong. Today, you're listening using your computer speaker system by default. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions to Lydia by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end. Lydia Tjong is an Assistant Director of the Radiation Protection Services sector at ARPANSA. Following the completion of her engineering degree, she started working at ARPANSA as a scientific officer for nearly 12 years before taking on her current role. Her specialisation in ARPANSA is electromagnetic radiation, with her most recent focus being ultraviolet radiation. Her work in the UV area includes development of the sunscreen testing, managing the compliance monitoring scheme for the ARPANSA swing tag, and development of the rules of the new certification trademark, which led to the new design of ARPANSA swing tag. I will now hand this over to Lydia.
Thank you, Ida. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm representing the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency, ARPANSA for short, and I am going to present on the ultraviolet radiation services that we provide, and with the focus of the ultraviolet protection factor testing for clothing. So what is UV and what's the risk of UV? As we may all know, skin cancers is a big issue in Australia. The UV level in Australia is amongst the highest in the world. And we can see from the graph on the top left-hand side here, that melanoma of the skin actually is number 3 in terms of the number of cases each year diagnosed in Australia, and just below the breast cancer and prostate cancer. So, and the statistics also went on and say that 2 in 3 Australians will be diagnosed with skin cancer in their lifetime. And that's not just the melanoma of the skin, but also non-melanoma of the skin. So on the graph on the bottom left-hand side, there are 3 types of UV radiation. So the UV radiation is classified into 3 types, and the classification is based on the wavelengths. So UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVA has the longest wavelengths, and what it means by longer wavelengths is that it can penetrate deeper into the skin layers. And UVA is thought to cause premature aging, so like wrinkle of the skin. And UVA is also recently implicated in skin cancer. UVB has shorter wavelengths, so it doesn't penetrate as far as UVA. However, it's been thought as a major cause of skin cancer. It can also cause cataracts and sunburn. UVC has the shortest wavelengths and therefore the most dangerous one. However, we are very, very fortunate that UVC is blocked by the ozone layer. So it's not a concern for us because it doesn't reach the Earth's surface. So the solar UVR, which means UV from the sun, reaches people on the ground not only directly from the sun, but it can also get scattered from the open sky, as well as reflected from the environment. So think of the couple that is walking on the beach here. They're walking on the sand, so they're not only getting UV from the direct exposure from the sun, but they also get reflection from the sand. And the sand actually reflects up to 25% of UV. So when you add all of things up, the direct exposure, the scattering, and the reflection, you can actually get a lot of UV. And even if you have a beach umbrella with you, so shade can give you still up to the 50% of UV. So it doesn't actually block UV 100%. And this is also a misconception that a lot of people have, that on a cloudy day, you don't get sunburned, but it's not true. So even on a cloudy day, you can still get sunburned because 90% of UV can penetrate clouds. And up to 50% of daily UV is emitted between 11 and 2 p.m. So if it'll be a good idea if you avoid these hours. So what is ARPANSA and what is our role? So we are the Australian government's primary authority on radiation protection and nuclear safety. We have the mandate of protecting the people and the environment from the harmful effects of radiation. So we have contributed to the UV protection space over the years, and we have developed a guideline on the limits for occupational UV exposure, shown, which is the yellow book in the picture here in the middle. So it shows, it gives the limits on how much exposure should a worker get to protect them against UV. And we also contributed to the solarium ban. So a picture here on the bottom right, showing an APPA staff member who was doing measurements on solariums. And this led to the body of works that contribute to the banning of solaria in 2015. We also assist other government agencies with their compliance work. So for example, compliance for sunglasses, we have assisted the APPA, which is the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission, because sunglasses in Australia, before they can get sold, they have to be tested according to the safety standard. We also sit in the committees for the Australian standard. So we sit on the clothing standard, sunglasses standard, shade fabric standard, and the sunscreen standard. We also collaborate with university researchers. We also collaborate with other non-government organizations like Cancer Council. And we also collaborate with international organizations. And ARPANSA is a World Health Organization's collaborating center for UV. So what are the services related to UV that we provide at ARPANSA? If we know the slogan, slip, slop, slap, 6 slide, we test to all of this except the sunscreen. So we provide testing according to the Australian standard for clothing materials. So that includes fabrics, garments, hats, and other accessories like gloves, scarves, neck buffs, beach towels, and other accessories. And we also test for sunglasses as well as shade fabrics. So the only thing we don't test is the sunscreen, and the reason for that is because there is an ethical issue in the methodology in the Australian standard. So at the moment in the Australian standard, human participants have to be involved. So because we are a radiation protection agency, we cannot irradiate humans in the lab. We are accredited laboratory. We recently have had extension to our accreditation for another 3 years. And the accreditation is provided by the National Association of Testing Authorities. So when we test sun protective clothing, what we are measuring is the sun protection provided by the materials. And we measure that through the measure of UPF rating. So UPF is a concept that is originally standardized in Australia in 1996. And it stands for the ultraviolet protection factor. And it actually, what it's saying is it quantifies how effectively a piece of clothing shields against the sun. And as far as we know, there are only 3 laboratories in Australia that are NATA accredited for this UPF testing. We are one of them. And the reason why we do this testing is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the main goal is to protect the Australian public. But also we found that when we participated in the interlaboratory comparison, maybe close to about 10 years ago, with external labs, not only in Australia, but also overseas, there was a big discrepancy in the UPF results. And what we think is that, if we provide this testing, if we can prevent products out there not to be mislabeled, then we want to continue to provide this service. So this is why we provide this testing, to ensure that products out there are correctly labeled according to the UPF ratings. So the factors that contribute to the UPF. So what does the UPF is saying? So the UPF indicates how well the material blocks the UV radiation from the sun. And the higher the UPF rating, the more UV from the sun gets blocked by the material, and the less exposure to UV that a person will receive. So fabrics are made of tiny fibers that are woven or knitted together. And in the picture up the top here, which are different types of fabrics shown under a microscope, we can see lots of spaces between the fibers. And UV can pass directly through these holes to reach the skin. So even if you have a piece of clothing covering every square inch of your body, but if the UV gets right through it, then it's not much use. And this is the reason why we need to test. So in the picture up the top, it's showing UPF of 3 from the left, and to the right up to the UPF of 115. And as you can see, with the increasing UPF, the holes are smaller, getting smaller and smaller. And that's because the material actually are knitted together more like closer to give higher UPF rating. So for example, twill, which is used to make denim, is an example of a tightly woven fabric. So when the weave is open, the fabrics give much less protection, and we don't want that. So fabrics can be made from many types of fibers, including cotton, wool, and nylon. Most fibers naturally absorb some UV radiation, and some have elastic threads that pull the fibers tightly together. And this reduces the spaces between the holes. Synthetic fibers, such as polyester, lycra, nylon, and acrylic, are more protective than, for example, cotton. So this is why I guess synthetic fibers are used more for sun protective clothing. Shiny or lustrous semi-synthetic fibers like rayon reflects more UV than like a linen. Linen is more like a matte type of fabric. So more matte material will tend to absorb UV rather than reflect UV. So, and also other things to consider is the fabric's weight and density. So light, sheer material like silk will provide far less UV protection than a heavy cotton denim, for example. And many dyes absorb UV. So darker colors tend to absorb more UV than lighter colors. And then bright colors such as red can also substantially absorb UV rays. And it's also interesting to note that the more vivid the color, the greater the protection. So a bright yellow shirt is more protective than a pale one. And many white fabrics have optical whitening agents. So these are chemical compounds that can be added to fabrics that strongly absorb UV and especially UVA. So these are the things that you can do to improve the UPF of your fabrics. So after mentioning all these factors, though loosely evaluating fabric according to these factors might help to size up the UV protection. It is often very difficult to pinpoint exactly how protective a fabric is until you test them. So, for example, holding a piece of fabric against the light can show you how much light is passing through the fabric, but still, this is not an ideal way of sizing up the UV protection because the human eyes see visible light and not UV. So we cannot see UV radiation. So just talking about the Australian standard for sun protective clothing, which is the AS 4399, which is, the methodology that we follow in our testing. And what is this standard about? So this standard was first introduced in 1996. And this standard provides guidance for manufacturers and suppliers on communicating the sun protection properties of materials to consumers by the means of protection classification and the UPF rating. So UPF ratings are commonly advertised on products via the means of labeling for swimwear, workwear, schoolwear, and outdoor wear. And this assists consumers in selecting the products that provide the best protection against UV. So as we can see in the table here, so the Australian standard stipulates 3 UPF classification ranging from minimum to excellent. So minimum, good, and excellent protection. And there are 4 UPF ratings associated with these classifications. So 15 is minimum, 30 is good, and UPF rating of 50 and 50 plus represents the excellent protection. So the standard was first introduced in 1996, but then it was revised in 2017. And the revision in the 2017 standard introduced a body coverage requirement. So this was new. So the body coverage requirement is what's shown in the picture on the right-hand side here. So if you produce sun protective clothing, not only your materials have to have to show the UPF protection via the term of UPF rating. So not only your material has to be good enough to protect you against the sun, but they also need to fulfill the requirement of the body coverage. So for example, if it's a whole body coverage, the upper and the lower body, then you have to cover from the neck point up to the halfway between the crotch and knee. And for the sleeves, you need to cover from the shoulder point to the 3/4 of the upper arm. So not until the elbow, but close to the elbow, which is the 3/4 of the upper arm. So what it means that when this body coverage requirement is introduced, if you are labeling your products, you need to test for the UPF rating, number 1, and number 2, you need to fulfill the body coverage requirement. Oh, okay, I've forgotten one thing. So why should we pay attention to the UPF rating? As we know, Australia has one of the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. And if you work outdoors or spend time outdoors in leisure activity, even for a few hours, you need clothing made from materials with UPF ratings of the minimum of 50. But if you are planning to spend longer than a few hours, if you want to be all day in the sun, then you need to have at least a UPF rating of 50 plus. Okay. So I just want to introduce the ARPANSA swing tags. So we've recently launched our new design of swing tag. So these are the looks of the ARPANSA swing tags comparing the old and the new. And the old tag has been around since 1992. The main purpose of these tags and why we released these tags is because we want to disseminate sun protection messages to the Australian public. And up until last year, we have issued close to 90 million swing tags. So it's been a successful initiative for us, and we want to continue to do this. And we have done a facelift to the swing tag. So that's why we have come up with a new design, which has been registered by the IP Australia as a certification trademark in December last year. And we have just launched it this year. So what it means by certification trademark is that because we are not selling products, like, for example, a can of Coke, we rather certifying products. So that's why it's a certification trademark. And the assessment of the rules was done by the APPA. So to comply with the use of this trademark, licensees have to comply with the set of rules that have been approved by the APPA. So why did we change to the new swing tag? The main reason is because the Australian standard has adopted the acronym UPF to be appropriate for clothing only, but we want to expand to other products such as sunglasses and shade fabrics. Another reason, which is a reason that might be relevant for new customers, is that we have modernized the rules. So the old trademark has an old school rules, as we call it. So it's not digital friendly. A lot of the paperwork has to be done with hard copies, and especially for customers that are based overseas, it's very hard, especially during COVID, for them to actually mail hard copy paperwork to us. And it was such a long, it also posed a long delay as well. So it's causing some issues. So the modernization of the rules with this new trademark will make it easier for our customers to apply and maintain their licenses. And lastly, the standard for the sun protective clothing, I mentioned earlier that it was revised in 2017. It was revised again last year in 2020. So these new swing tags have been updated to comply with the latest edition of the standard, which is the 2020 edition. So on the last slide here, so there are 3-step process to get the ARPANSA swing tag. If any of you are interested in getting the ARPANSA swing tags, so because the swing tags carry the Australian government trademark, so before customers can purchase the swing tags, they must obtain the license to use the trademark. So in terms of the flow of work, there is the 3-step process is the first step is for you to test your materials at ARPANSA. Unfortunately, we don't accept test reports from other providers. So if you want to get the ARPANSA swing tags, you must test with us. And secondly, you apply for the license to use the sun protection certification trademark. And after that, you can, after your license is approved and processed, then you can start ordering the ARPANSA swing tags. And these pictures down here, just to show you some products that have been labeled with the ARPANSA swing tags. And that is all from me. So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Lydia. That was a great presentation. It was very interesting and some important facts you provided us with. So thank you very much for that. Now, it appears we've had a couple of questions come through. So to kickstart this session, the first one is, does the ARPANSA UVR services also provide swing tags for other products, such as sunglasses?
Yeah. So at the moment, we only have swing tags for clothing products, but we have already planned to design some swing tags for sunglasses as well as shade fabrics. Maybe we're gonna release the sunglasses one next year.
Excellent. And our second question is, can companies print their own swing tags using the ARPANSA design?
Yeah. So at the moment, we don't allow customers to print their own swing tags using the ARPANSA design. So we have to dispatch our tags from our warehouse in ARPANSA. But yeah, we do have quite a lot of queries on this, and we are looking into it, especially for customers that are based overseas. There is that preference to print overseas, offshore, especially to save money on freight. But we are looking into this. At the moment, no, but it might come about in the future.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, over the coming days, our participants will receive a follow-up email with a link to view today's recording, along with the PowerPoint presentation and other relevant information. I will also include Lydia's email as part of this email, so should you have any other questions or queries, you can contact her. So on behalf of Lydia and APPA, thank you for all our participants in joining us today, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you once again, Lydia.
Thank you, Ida. Thanks everyone for listening.